This month is all about Thanksgiving, so today we're making a recipe that is not only a Thanksgiving staple, but a year-round staple in my house, mashed potatoes and gravy. My family loves mushrooms, so I'm going to add oyster mushrooms to my gravy. This step is optional, you definitely can make a tasty gravy without it. I'm going to cook these mushrooms in a little bit of homemade ghee that I've infused with garlic, rosemary, and thyme. Check out my last video if you want to learn to make ghee, and my first video if you want to learn out how to infuse it. I'll also add a little salt and pepper and let these mushrooms cook down for a few minutes. While the mushrooms cook, let's talk about types of potatoes. Potatoes are categorized as starchy, waxy, or all-purpose. Starchy potatoes are, as their name implies, high in starch. They are low in moisture, so they will absorb added milk and butter, making fluffy mashed potatoes. Common varieties of starchy potatoes are russet, Idaho, and red potatoes. Waxy potatoes have less starch but more moisture and sugar. They have a waxy outer skin, a creamier flesh, and hold their shape better after cooking, so they're usually used when you want to leave the potato intact. Common varieties of waxy potatoes are new potatoes and French fingerlings. And lastly, we have all-purpose potatoes. These have a starch content somewhere between starchy and waxy, so they can be substituted for either. Common varieties of these are Yukon Gold and white potatoes. Pick your potatoes based on the texture you want. I'm going to be using all-purpose potatoes today. To start, I'm going to peel these. If you want a rustic texture, then skip this, but be sure to scrub them well. After peeling each potato, I'm going to cut it into equalish pieces and add it to a pot of cool water. We want to start with cool water instead of hot water so the potatoes cook evenly. Once all the potatoes are added, I will turn the heat on and bring the pot to a boil. Now let's get back to our gravy. I'm going to take out the mushrooms that have been cooking and set them aside for now. I'm adding my garlic-infused ghee and whisking it with equal parts flour. I'm using Char's gluten-free mix at Universal Flour, but use whatever gluten-free flour you like or have on hand. I'm using 3 tablespoons of each ghee and flour. The important thing is that they are equal. We want this to cook for a few minutes to cook out the flour taste. I'm going to keep whisking it so it does not burn and we make sure we have no clumps. Now that this is cooked for a couple of minutes, I'm going to start adding in the broth or stock. Beef stock is a popular choice for gravy. I'm using a combination of the chicken stock and vegetable stock from my other video because that's what I have on hand. I'm going to add a little at a time and whisk it all together until I don't have any clumps. The amount of broth or stock that you add depends on how thick you want your gravy to be. Now that I've got all my broth and stock added, I'm going to add my mushrooms back in and let this simmer on a low heat. If you didn't use homemade stock or you just want to add a little extra flavor, I like this tomato bouillon with chicken flavor from Knorr. Based on the ingredients listed on the bottle, I think this is low FODMAP because it doesn't have any onion or garlic listed. Now back to our potatoes that have been boiling. Once a fork easily goes into the potato, it is time to drain them. Don't overcook them because they can absorb too much water and become soupy. I'm adding the drained potatoes back into the same pot so the heat from the pot can evaporate any water left on the potatoes. I'm not fancy enough to have a potato racer, so I'm going to use a masher to start breaking the potatoes apart. A fork or spoon also works for this. After giving it a few good mashes, I'm adding in garlic-infused ghee, a little bit of unsweetened almond milk, some salt and pepper, and then continue mashing. The amount of ghee and almond milk you want to use is something I think is best to start with a little bit and add as you go. How much you need depends on the potatoes you're using and how creamy you want them to be. If you are using starchy potatoes, keep in mind that over mashing them will give them a gluey texture from the starch being released, so stop once you get that mashiness that you like. I'm going to taste to see if I need more salt and pepper, and I'm also going back to my gravy to taste it for salt and pepper. Now you are ready to plate and dig in. Since this month's videos are all about Thanksgiving, next week I'm going to make a low FODMAP and gluten-free stuffing. See y'all next time!